Mid-concert, Ace Frehley shut off his pedals, killed the effects, and returned to just the amplifier's naked voice. Nobody expected it. The arena was full. 12,000 people. Madison Square Garden, November 1978. The lights were hot. The stage was enormous. The sound system could shake concrete. Ace Frehley stood center stage, guitar in hand, surrounded by everything rock and roll had become by the late 70s. Stacks of amplifiers reaching toward the ceiling, effect pedals lined up like soldiers at his feet, smoke machines pumping white clouds across the stage floor, lights programmed to flash and sync with every power chord. It was spectacle. It was what people paid for. It was what rock music had evolved into: bigger, louder, more. Ace was 3 songs into the set. The crowd was roaring. The band was tight. Everything was working exactly as planned. And then Ace stopped playing. Not a dramatic stop. Not a rock star pose. He just stopped. His right hand lifted off the strings. The sound cut. The other musicians kept going for 2 bars before they realized what had happened and stumbled to silence. 12,000 people went quiet, confused. Ace stood motionless for 3 seconds. Then he bent down and began switching off his effect pedals. One by one. Click. 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 The small LED lights on each unit going dark. The phaser. The delay. The distortion booster. All of it. Gone. Ace didn't defend himself. He never did. To understand what happened in that arena, you need to understand what happened 3 weeks earlier in a recording studio in Los Angeles. Ace Frehley wasn't always Ace Frehley, guitar icon and spaceman. In 1978, he was still figuring out who he was apart from the makeup and the character. Kiss was massive, the biggest band in America, maybe the world. But Ace had started to feel something shift inside himself, a quiet discomfort he couldn't quite name. The band was preparing to record their next album. The producer was a famous name from England, brought in specifically because the label wanted a bigger sound. More production. More layers. More effects. Ace had shown up to the studio on a Tuesday morning, guitar case in hand, ready to lay down tracks for a song he'd written. Simple song. Straightforward progression. He'd been playing it at home on his acoustic, and it worked. It felt right. The producer, a man named Malcolm Grice, known for his work with prog rock bands and his obsession with studio technology, was waiting for him in the control room. The recording space was set up like a laboratory, cables everywhere, multiple amplifier combinations mic'd from 6 different angles, a rack of effects units that looked like mission control. Ace, Malcolm said, gesturing to the setup with obvious pride. I've designed something special for your tone on this track. We're going to layer 3 different amp sounds, run them through this new digital delay I brought from London, add some phasing on the chorus sections, and... I was thinking simpler. Ace interrupted quietly. Malcolm blinked. Simpler? Yeah. Just the guitar and the amp. Maybe a little reverb. The producer smiled the way adults smile at children who don't understand complicated things. Ace, with respect, that's not going to cut it for what this song needs. We're competing with bands that are pushing boundaries, using technology to create soundscapes that... I just want to play the song. Ace said. And you will. But we need to enhance it. Make it modern. Make it competitive. Ace looked at the rack of equipment, at the multiple microphones, at the forest of cables snaking across the floor. Then he looked at Malcolm. Can I try it my way first? Ace asked. Just once. If it doesn't work, we do it your way. Malcolm sighed, annoyed but willing to humor him. Fine. 1 take. Then we do it properly. Ace plugged his guitar directly into a single amplifier. A 59 Les Paul into a Marshall half-stack. No pedals. No effects. No enhancement. He turned the volume to 5, not even halfway, and played the song. It took 4 minutes. When he finished, the control room was silent. The engineer, a session veteran named Terry who'd worked on hundreds of records, was staring at the meters with an expression Ace couldn't read. Malcolm cleared his throat. That was adequate. But now let's build on it. We'll keep that as a foundation and... That's the take, Terry said suddenly, his voice firm. That's the one we use. Malcolm turned sharply. Excuse me? I've been doing this for 20 years, Terry said, not backing down. That's the best guitar sound I've recorded in 5. We're not touching it. Malcolm's face reddened. I'm the producer on this session, and I'm telling you we need more. Then you're wrong, Terry said simply. The room went tense. Ace stood in the recording booth, watching through the glass, saying nothing. Subscribe and leave a comment, because some moments only make sense when we remember them together. Malcolm didn't speak to Ace for the rest of that session. The take stayed. The song went on the album with nothing added, just guitar, amp, and the silence around the notes. When the album came out 3 months later, that song became the one people talked about. Not the heavily produced tracks. Not the ones with layers of effects and studio magic. The simple one. The honest one. Music critics called it refreshingly direct. Radio stations played it more than the designated single. Guitarists tried to figure out what Ace had done to get that tone, assuming there was some secret technique, some hidden effect. There wasn't. It was just a guitar and an amplifier and a man who understood that sometimes less is the only answer. But Ace didn't talk about it. He didn't give interviews explaining his philosophy. He didn't write essays about authenticity versus spectacle. He just remembered. And he waited. 3 weeks later, Madison Square Garden. Mid-concert. Surrounded by thousands of people and mountains of equipment, and everything rock music had become. Ace bent down and switched off his pedals. The stage manager in the wings started gesturing frantically, thinking something had broken. The sound engineer reached for faders, trying to figure out if there was a technical problem. The other band members exchanged confused glances. Ace straightened up, guitar in hand, connected now to nothing but his amplifier. He stepped to the microphone. "This next song," he said, his voice quiet, almost conversational, "doesn't need any of that." And he played. The same song from the studio. The one Terry had insisted they keep simple. But now, live, in an arena designed for spectacle, Ace played it exactly the way he'd recorded it. Just the guitar. Just the amp. Just the notes, and the spaces between them. The arena was so quiet you could hear individual strings resonate. 12,000 people collectively held their breath. Away from the spotlight, Ace made a choice no one expected. Backstage after the show, Malcolm Grice was waiting. He'd been at the concert. Invited by the label, seated in the VIP section, watching his production choices play out on the biggest stage in New York. He found Ace in the hallway leading to the dressing rooms. Ace was still in his stage clothes, guitar case in hand, heading toward the exit. "That was quite a statement you made out there," Malcolm said, his voice tight with something between anger and grudging respect. Ace stopped. Looked at him. Said nothing. "Shutting off all your effects in the middle of a show," Malcolm continued. "Very dramatic. Very rock and roll rebellion. Did it feel good? Making your point?" Ace shifted his guitar case to his other hand. "Wasn't making a point." "No? Then what was it?" "The song didn't need it," Ace said simply. "So I didn't use it." Malcolm laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think it's that simple? You think music is just about what's necessary?" "Sometimes," Ace said. "Music is about impact. About grabbing people and not letting go. About using every tool available to create something they've never heard before." Ace looked at Malcolm for a long moment. "You heard the silence in there? When I was playing?" "Of course." Dead quiet. Very dramatic effect. "That wasn't an effect," Ace said. "That was people listening. Actually listening. Not reacting to production or spectacle or anything else. Just listening to the music. And you think you achieved that by removing elements? By making it smaller? No, Ace said. I achieved that by making it honest. He started walking again. Malcolm called after him. Ace, be serious for a moment. You can't build a career on simplicity. Not in this business. Not in 1978. The bands that are going to last are the ones pushing forward, adding more, creating bigger experiences. Ace stopped at the exit door. He turned back one more time. Maybe, he said. Or maybe the ones that last are the ones that remember what they're actually here to do. Which is what? Play. What followed silenced everyone in the room. The conversation spread. Terry, the engineer, told other engineers. Musicians who'd been at the Garden show told other musicians. Malcolm, despite his disagreement, told other producers, usually as a cautionary tale about artistic stubbornness, but the story spread anyway. And something strange happened. Other guitarists started experimenting. Turning off pedals mid-show. Stripping down their rigs. Testing whether simpler could actually be more powerful. Not all of them understood what Ace had understood. Some thought it was about volume or tone or gear philosophy. They missed the point. It wasn't about the equipment. It was never about the equipment. It was about knowing the difference between what serves the music and what serves the ego. About understanding that power doesn't come from accumulation, more effects, more volume, more spectacle. Power comes from precision. From knowing exactly what's needed and having the confidence to use only that. Ace never explained this in interviews. He never wrote it down as philosophy. He just kept playing, and sometimes he used effects and sometimes he didn't, and people who paid attention started to understand that the choice itself was the message. Years later, in a small guitar shop in Los Angeles, a young session player was testing amplifiers. He plugged in a Les Paul, set everything flat, and played a simple progression. The shop owner, an older man who'd worked as a tech for touring bands in the 70s, stopped what he was doing and listened. "You know who taught me that?" the old tech said when the player finished. "Taught you what?" "To listen to what's actually there before adding anything else." The tech gestured to the amplifier. Ace Frehley. Madison Square Garden, 1978. Middle of the show, he shut off every pedal on his board and just played. Changed how I thought about guitar tone forever. The young player looked at the simple setup in front of him. What was special about it? Nothing, the tech said. That was the point. It was just a guitar and an amp and a guy who understood that sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The pedals Ace turned off that night at Madison Square Garden, he still has them. They're in cases in his studio. He uses them sometimes, when a song needs them. But he never forgot what he proved to himself that night, that the strength to use less is harder than the impulse to use more. That silence can be louder than noise. That the crowd doesn't remember the effects. They remember the moment when everything else fell away and only the music remained. The next morning, Ace found a note slipped under his hotel room door. No name. Just 2 sentences in handwriting he didn't recognize. "I was in row 34 last night. Thank you for reminding me why I started playing guitar." He kept that note. Still has it. 3 months after Madison Square Garden, Malcolm Grice called Ace's manager. He had a new project, a different band, and he wanted to try something. Simpler production, he said. Like that track Ace did. Just wanted to let him know. He was right. The manager passed along the message. Ace nodded, said nothing, and went back to his guitar. Because that's what Ace Frehley understood that others were still learning. You don't win these arguments with words. You don't prove your point by explaining it. You prove it by playing. By standing on stage in front of 12,000 people and having the courage to turn everything off except what matters. The pedals from that night sit in his studio now. Tagged with white tape, dated 11/78. He still uses them. But only when the song asks for them. Not when his ego does. 40 years later, musicians still talk about the night Ace Frehley stopped a show at Madison Square Garden to teach 12,000 people a lesson he never spoke aloud. Real power isn't about how much you can add. It's about knowing when enough is enough. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered.